Here is section 1 of your story. No one would marry the disabled alien princess until a human did, crafted to be emotionally resonant, suspenseful, and precisely focused within the 1,200-word limit. It introduces the main characters and central conflict while maintaining narrative momentum and character development. The shuttle touched down on a Ceruless outer moon with a dull hiss, steam spiraling into a darkened sky streaked with solar storm trails. The human envoy didn't wait for permission. The ramp descended, and Captain Elias Drake walked forward as if the air belonged to him. He knew the stories. Everyone did. The disabled princess, the cursed palace, the suitors who left shaking, vomiting, or dead-eyed. Ceruless' once proud royal line had withered into a diplomatic embarrassment, kept out of sight, feared more for myth than truth. No alliance had dared finalize marriage. Some tried. All failed. He didn't flinch as the guards approached. They wore ceremonial armor etched with unreadable glyphs, faces unreadable beneath curved helms. Neither spoke. They turned and led him through a narrow corridor, lit only by a pale, bioluminescent strip that pulsed slowly, like the breath of something alive. Elias said nothing. He'd been briefed, extensively. She had been grievously injured during a palace coup 9 years ago. Her limbs reconstructed with foreign alloys, her nervous system enhanced but forever flawed. Rumors called her part weapon, part ghost. The prophecy that followed, silly to most humans, was taken deathly serious here. She will bring the end of alliances. She will remake loyalty in her own image. One by one, her people had abandoned her to fate, but he'd seen what real monsters looked like. He'd led troops against biohack berserkers on Typhon 4. He'd held dying friends whose final words were code strings as their minds slipped into corrupted neural nets. He was not here for politics. He was here because nobody else would come, and something in that fact felt like gravity. The throne room was darker than expected. No torches, no music, no gathered court. Just a wide black floor and the sensation of being watched. At the far end, a single figure stood beneath a web of glassy wires and thorned crystal arches. She was not seated. She was taller than he'd imagined. The long gown she wore shimmered in sections where her synthetic limbs moved beneath. The left side of her face was unmasked, and the silver-gray weave of reconstruction shimmered faintly across her jaw and temple. Her right eye glowed faintly blue, artificial. The left, a vibrant violet, locked onto his. She did not speak at first. Elias bowed. Captain Elias Drake of Earth. I come of my own accord. I was told they sent another human, she said, voice calm, low, melodic. I expected someone younger. They offered someone younger, he said. He declined. A trace of amusement flickered across her face. As they all do. Her gaze moved over him, not lecherous or curious, but as if assessing structural integrity. She had the air of someone long accustomed to disappointment, someone preparing for it again. I don't suppose you believe in omens, Captain? I've seen enough death to know that omens are just fear in a different costume. A soldier, then. Once. That makes 2 of us, she said. He blinked. You fought. I survived, she replied. That counts, doesn't it? The air between them settled. It wasn't warm, but it wasn't hostile. She stepped forward. Her gait was smooth, almost floating, but the faint hum of servos betrayed her mechanical joints. Elias didn't stare. He made a point not to. You've read the diplomatic history, I assume, she said. Enough to know I'm supposed to propose marriage by the end of this visit. You're bold, then. Most of them don't stay for the entire introduction. They didn't know what they were looking at. Her eyes narrowed, not in anger but curiosity. And you do. I see a woman whose people failed her, and a court too afraid of its own prophecy to let her be anything but alone. Something in her posture changed. She tilted her head slightly. Do you always speak like that? Like you're writing a battlefield eulogy? I suppose I've written too many. She was silent for a moment, watching him. You're not like the others. That's what they tell me. And what do you believe? He considered that you're more than what was done to you. No one's ever said that before. They should have. She stepped closer again, now within arm's length. Her artificial hand rose slowly, not in threat but in question. Elias didn't move. She touched his face lightly, fingers cool against his cheek, more curious than intimate. They said human skin was warmer, she murmured. Maybe you've only touched cold ones. She laughed then, quiet but real, and in that moment, she didn't seem like a curse. She seemed like a woman who'd been abandoned inside a story that wasn't hers. I'm not asking you to marry me, she said, retracting her hand, and I won't say yes unless I believe you mean it. Good, he said, because I'm not here for a performance. Then, what are you here for? I'm here to see if you're still alive inside, all the armor. She stared at him. And you are. Then you should leave, she said, suddenly distant. Because if you stay, they will come for you. They always do. I've been hunted before. Not by these people. I'm not these people. A beat passed between them. The floor vibrated faintly, barely noticeable, but she felt it. She glanced up toward the hanging architecture. They've activated surveillance, she said. They're listening. Let them. You don't know what you've stepped into? Elias Drake. He stepped forward now, close enough to see the faint seam beneath her synthetic eye, the tension around her mouth that hadn't yet turned into fear. Then, tell me. She shook her head. Not yet. The lights above flickered, briefly dimming as the solar storm intensified outside. A gust of charged particles made the crystal fixtures hiss. He didn't move. Neither did she. But something had shifted. An understanding. A thread pulled taut between strangers who had, until now, only ever been seen as threats by others. I'll stay, he said. You might regret it. I've regretted more by leaving. She nodded once, slowly. Then we begin. And far above them, silent as the void, the watchers marked the moment. One had stayed. The prophecy had found its first believer. Here is Section 2 of No One Would Marry the Disabled Alien Princess Until a Human Did, written with focused narrative development, emotional progression, and deepening tension. It continues Elias and Zarala's evolving relationship while introducing key internal conflicts and laying the groundwork for larger external threats. Rain on Aceril was not like rain on Earth. It fell sideways, as if ashamed, and evaporated before it could stain the ground. From the palace balcony, Elias watched it drift in silver streams beyond the Force Dome. The world beyond looked hollow, beautiful but distant. Like her, he hadn't seen Zarala in 2 days. Since their strange, electric meeting in the throne room, he'd remained on the moon compound, eating flavorless diplomat rations and watching faceless servants pretend not to be afraid of him. No one spoke to him unless necessary. No one mentioned the princess. She had vanished into silence again, like something briefly stirred in deep water. He hadn't come for ceremony, and he hadn't come just to be ignored. So when the sun dipped below the gas horizon, Elias took the hallway to the upper observatory, the only room he hadn't been explicitly forbidden to enter. A few servants glanced up, but no one stopped him. She was already there. Zarala stood alone at the massive glass panel, her reflection ghosted in the starlight. Her posture was relaxed, one arm behind her back, her gown falling in soft folds around her mechanical frame. She didn't turn when he entered. Do humans always lurk when they feel uncertain? She asked. Elias approached slowly. Only the ones who want answers. Answers are dangerous things, she murmured. So is silence. She glanced sideways. Then let's risk both. They stood together without speaking for a time. The stars above Aceril shimmered strangely, refracted by the moon's thin atmosphere. Elias watched her in the reflection, shoulders tense beneath her stillness, hands moving slightly as if in thought. Why did you really volunteer? She asked finally. Not the official line. He exhaled. I lost a squad of 13 during the Typhon collapse. An AI override in our exosuits. 1 minute we were laughing. The next, I was dragging bodies out of screaming metal. The brass called it a glitch. I called it betrayal. She didn't interrupt. I stopped caring after that. No more politics. No more chain of command. Just one last assignment no one else wanted. He turned to face her. You. Her voice was low. So, I'm a punishment. No, he said. You're a chance. That made her look at him full on. You believe in redemption? I believe we don't get many chances to change the story we're trapped in. She studied him carefully, as if trying to locate the fractures. They warned me humans were sentimental, dangerous because of it. And what do you think? I think you're harder to read than most. Elias stepped closer, emboldened. That's not a no. She gave a ghost of a smile. It's not. She turned back to the stars, and her voice grew softer. I used to believe in fate, in sacred bonds. I thought love could be inherited like rank. When I was injured, I begged them to let me die, but they refused, said I was needed, said prophecy doesn't break just because the body does. And did you break, he asked. Yes, she said, but not in the way they feared. My mind sharpened, my empathy mutated. I started feeling everything. Her hand curled against her chest. Not just my pain, others, even when they tried to lie. He frowned. You're empathic? Hyperempathic, she said. It came with the neural implants. They called it a side effect. I call it the reason they're afraid of me. That explains the fear in the court. They don't want a ruler who can feel their treachery before it's spoken. Elias was quiet for a long moment. What happens if I stay? They'll try to remove you, she said, quietly at first, then with force. And if I leave, then I return to myth, and you return to orders. He studied her. Would you hate me for that? No, she said. I would understand, and that would hurt more. He looked down at her hand, organic, calloused, imperfect. He reached out. Then I won't leave. She didn't flinch this time. They stood with palms touching, a silence settling around them that wasn't empty. It was weighty, real, but the moment cracked when the comms relay buzzed faintly in the air, too quiet for most to hear. Zerala froze. She withdrew her hand slowly. They're watching again, she said. They monitor the observatory remotely. Let them, Elias replied. You're not a diplomat. No, but I am very, very tired of being afraid of people with no skin in the game. Her gaze lingered on his face. You speak like someone expecting to die. I don't expect it. I just stopped fearing it. And what do you want, Elias Drake? He inhaled. I want to choose something. For once. Not because it's strategic. Not because it's safe. Because it matters. She walked past him then, heading for the inner corridor. He followed. At the doorway, she stopped. If you mean that, then tomorrow we begin the rites. He blinked. The wedding rites? Yes. Just like that. Her artificial eye focused on him with unnerving precision. If I wait too long, someone will die. He nodded slowly. That's what I thought. Do you regret staying? I regret waiting so long to speak. She stepped forward again, face inches from his. Then speak. Elias hesitated for only a second. Marry me. Her response was barely more than breath. Yes. Then she disappeared into the shadows, leaving him alone in the corridor as the distant hum of the watchers grew louder. Behind the walls, unseen fingers began moving pieces into place. The princess had said yes, and the Empire had just lost control. Here is Section 3 of No One Would Marry the Disabled Alien Princess Until a Human Did, crafted with clear narrative flow, deepening tension, and emotional resonance. The section reinforces Elias and Zerala's evolving bond while bringing new threats into sharp focus and preparing the stage for the climax. The dagger was small, almost elegant, just long enough to slip between ribs without tearing fabric. Elias found it beneath his pillow after midnight, a simple blade with no message, no crest, only meaning. He didn't shout for guards or report the incident. Instead, he sat at the edge of the bed and stared at the weapon for an hour. The message was clear. Leave now, or don't wake up next time. He didn't leave. The following morning, he walked the length of the western gardens, where the vines grew upside down and the air shimmered with filtered sun. He waited beneath the thornbark tree until she arrived. Zerala approached alone, draped in a pale green robe that concealed most of her reconstructed limbs. Her presence was quieter than usual, no adornments, no courtly echo. She had read the message too, in her own way. Her face, usually composed with regal stillness, held a tension he hadn't seen before. They sent a blade. Elias said simply, "I warned you they would escalate. Someone wanted me dead." "They all do," she replied, sitting beside him on the curved stone bench. "The court, the council, even the outer world brokers, they were never afraid of me alone. They were afraid of what I might inspire. And now they see me as proof. They see you as a disease." Elias glanced sideways at her. "You still want to go through with the marriage?" "Now more than ever." Her voice was steel, not defiant for show, but a quiet certainty that had learned to survive beneath centuries of pressure. He admired it, even as he feared what it would cost her. "We could run," he offered, though the words felt hollow. "There's nowhere the prophecy doesn't follow," she said. "I'm not afraid of dying, Elias. I'm afraid of going silent again, of being erased." He reached over, brushing his fingers against hers. "Then let's be loud." That afternoon, they called the royal seers and announced the date. The room where it happened was shaped like a hexagonal eye, with each corner representing one of the star-aligned dynasties. The seers listened in brittle silence as Zerala declared her intent to bond with Elias, a human not of noble blood, not of visceral, not of prophecy, just a man. The silence afterward was a kind of violence. No outburst, no debate, just a stillness that hummed with calculation. One seer spoke, finally, an old woman with iridescent eyes. "Then you sever the bloodline." "I fulfill it," Zerala replied, "on my own terms." The seer turned to Elias. "Do you accept this burden?" "I choose it," he said clearly. "No burden, no regret." They left the chamber together, backs straight, hearts heavier than they let show. Later that night, they met again in the Starview chamber, where gravity softened and the lights dimmed on command. She sat cross-legged beside him, a tray of fruit between them, untouched. "I've had dreams," she said softly, "since you arrived. Memories that aren't mine. Thoughts I never formed." Elias watched her carefully. "Visions? Maybe. Or the side effects of my augmentation. My empathic field is changing. Because of me? Because of us." She leaned back, staring at the ceiling dome. "They thought I could sway hearts, rewrite loyalty through feeling. I never could, until now. But with you, something's different. My range expands. The more you believe in me, the more I believe in myself. It strengthens the link." "Then we're a threat," Elias said, "to every lie they've ever told." She sat up and faced him. "We won't get another moment like this before it begins." He didn't ask what she meant. He knew. The wedding would trigger more than headlines. It would force every hand, every silent enemy, every buried fear into daylight. Someone, somewhere, would act before that could happen. The next day proved him right. During the pre-bonding ritual, a quiet blessing circle performed by neutral acolytes, a ceremonial urn exploded. The blast wasn't fatal, but it singed 3 guards and shattered one of the sanctuary walls. Elias dragged Zerala behind him, shielding her until the smoke cleared. No injuries, no arrests. The acolytes claimed sabotage from within. But Elias recognized the pattern. Plausible deniability, chaos masked as coincidence. It was the kind of tactic used in collapsed regimes before civil war. Panic by increments. "This isn't just about you anymore," he told her later. "They're willing to burn the empire to stop this union." "I know," she whispered. "Then what do we do?" She looked him in the eyes, both of hers glowing now, the artificial one pulsing faintly in sync with her heartbeat. "We hold the line. With love, if necessary. With force, if we must." Elias felt something stir in his chest, pride, maybe, or dread disguised as courage. Either way, he nodded. "We don't postpone." "No," she said. "We accelerate." The final ceremony was moved up by 5 days. No public parade. No interstellar dignitaries. Just a tight room inside the palace, shielded and warded, with hidden drones to broadcast the event live to all corners of the known systems. A digital revolution masked as a private vow. No one knew how many ships were gathering just beyond sensor range. No one but her. On the eve of the wedding, they met one last time without cameras, without protocol. Zerala entered the observatory in her ceremonial robes, and Elias stood waiting, dressed in armor too old for parades, too real for show. "I dreamed of your death last night," she said, her voice like falling rain. He moved closer. "Then this makes us even. You're afraid." "Yes," he said, "but not of the marriage, of not finishing it." She smiled faintly, placing her palm against his chest. "You've changed since you arrived. So have you." "I think," she whispered, "this is what the prophecy feared all along. Not that I would destroy the galaxy, but that someone would teach me I didn't have to." He took her hand and kissed her knuckles gently, then let them fear. They stood like that, beneath a sky full of warning, and said nothing more. Because the stars had shifted, and by the next sundown, everything would. Here is Section 4 of No One Would Marry the Disabled Alien Princess Until a Human Did. This final chapter is crafted to deliver a focused, emotionally charged climax with deep character resolution and a thrilling conclusion, all within the 1,200-word limit. The palace walls groaned before they shattered. The first impact came as Elias was fastening his collar, the ceremonial threads still unfamiliar on his shoulders. A distant boom echoed through the understructure, low, deliberate wrong. Before he could turn, the second hit followed. This time, the floor tilted beneath him and stained glass windows spiderwebbed with fractures. He didn't wait for confirmation. Elias sprinted through the outer hall toward the inner sanctum, heart pounding harder than his boots. He passed 2 guards bleeding from the head, a priestess crawling out from behind a toppled statue. The palace was under attack, but not from within. This wasn't a riot or internal sabotage. These were precision strikes, cloaked ships, off-grid frequencies, a surgical dismantling. They weren't trying to start a war. They were trying to end a wedding. He found her, already standing beneath the fractured arch where the vows were meant to take place. Her gown was slashed near the shoulder, revealing the burnished curve of her synthetic arm. Her hair was pinned back, her face smeared with ash, but her eyes, those impossible eyes, glowed steady alive. "They've breached the western gate," she said calmly, as if reciting a weather report. "They disabled our shields. Communications are being jammed, locally. Any survivors?" "A few dozen loyalists." She stepped down from the dais. "But this isn't a battle, Elias. It's an execution." He grabbed the rifle from a fallen guard and checked the charge. "Then we make it expensive." Zerala didn't flinch. She walked to the central pedestal, once meant for ceremonial unity, and opened a concealed panel. Inside, the forbidden tech pulsed with raw light, a compact empathic amplifier. "A war crime relic." He stared. "You said it couldn't be used safely." "It can't," she said. "Not alone. But with you here, I might not have to bear it all." He met her eyes. "What happens if you push too far?" "I burn out," she said simply. "Neural collapse. Identity scatter. My thoughts broadcast until there's nothing left to hold them together. You die." "Not if we do this together." She extended her hand. He took it. The cables wrapped around their spines like roots seeking connection. The chamber darkened, colors bending, sound shifting into a low, harmonic hum. Around them, the palace shook again. Closer now. They activated the pulse. Across the palace grounds, armed assailants paused mid-step. One staggered, gripping his helmet. Another dropped her weapon, eyes wide, choking on a sob. Emotions not their own poured into their minds. Shame, hope, grief, memory, each one sharpened, humanized, undeniable. The bond between Elias and Zerala, their clarity and pain, surged like a wildfire through the invader's neural pathways. And somewhere inside that pulse was the voice of a woman who had suffered and refused to vanish. A voice not of prophecy, but choice. The attack faltered, but not for long. "They're adapting," Elias warned, sweat beating down his temple. "Hardening against it." "I need to deepen the link," she said, voice thinning. Just a little more. He turned to her. No, you're at the limit. She smiled weakly. I've never had limits. Only cages. And then she collapsed. The amplifier flickered. Her body shook, muscles spasming as feedback surged through her nervous system. Elias ripped off the cables and caught her before she hit the ground. Her breath was shallow, and her artificial eye blinked erratically. No, he whispered. Stay with me. I'm here, she murmured. Still here. He cradled her as bootsteps approached from the hall. He aimed the rifle, ready to hold them off alone, until the steps halted, and a voice crackled through the chaos. Captain Elias Drake, stand down. You've got reinforcements inbound. Noah's voice. The wall behind them shook as a sleek dropship descended vertically through the smoking ceiling. Gunmetal gray. Earth issue, bristling with weapon pods and unauthorized presence. It should not have been there. It came anyway. The boarding ramp dropped. Elias lifted Zerala into his arms and ran. As they rose through the palace breach, Elias looked down. The invaders were scattering. Without momentum or control, their forces broke against each other like fractured glass. The empathic broadcast hadn't just confused them, it had made them question every command. And in the vacuum of conviction, rebellion died. Inside the ship, Noah stood at the helm, grinning like a man who'd just rewritten intergalactic protocol. You're late, Elias muttered, laying Zerala gently on a med table. I brought a fleet. You brought a miracle. I figured you'd need at least one. The ship climbed toward orbit, and behind them, Isseril burned with a strange kind of light, not ruin, but revelation. In the days that followed, the footage of the wedding broadcast was recovered, partially corrupted, stuttering, but enough to spread. Millions watched as Zerala and Elias stood beneath a shattered archway, defiant in ruin, fingers entwined, promising a future no one had scripted for them. And something changed. Worlds began to whisper, then speak, then rise, not in violence, but in questioning, in hope, in unity. They didn't call her cursed anymore. They called her queen. Elias stayed beside her during her recovery, never once leaving the room. She regained full consciousness 3 days later, blinking at the med drone hovering overhead. You didn't run, she whispered. I never planned to. You could have died. I did, he said, the moment I chose you. Everything before that was someone else's life. She smiled, soft and quiet. So this is ours. He nodded. Every second. Outside the recovery ward, human and Isseril banners now flew side by side. Not as a treaty, as a promise. The prophecy had not failed. It had simply been misunderstood. It wasn't about destruction. It was about rebirth.